Good morning, everyone. I hope you are well. A good Vach, Shavua Tov. I trust that you had a wonderful Shabbos. It was a beautiful Simcha in Shul. Mazel Tov again to the Epstein family. So let's learn something. So I'd like to take a contemporary look at some of the events that we've seen in the news, as well as relate it to the parsha of this past week. So there were two striking stories, I think, that we all were talking about. The first, of course, was the Christmas party that Boris PM number 10 had last year, and the questions are still being asked as to whether that was legal, whether it was COVID compliant, whether it was correct for them to go ahead and do that at a time when so many were fighting for their very lives due to COVID. So that was one, and it certainly has cast a shadow across the Prime Minister and across the government as a whole. And I guess the second story, which relates to this, is the story relating to the BBC in the Oxford Street. You may recall seeing the pictures, horrific pictures, of a group of Israelis that had gone to Oxford Street, and they were on a bus. And there were a group of youths outside that recognized and realized they were Israelis, and they started to hurl abuse and spit and throw things at the bus. They pelted the bus and they hurled curses and abuse. And the BBC, I mean, these things happen, we know about it, but it was the BBC's response. Initially, they wrote that they accused those on the bus of hurling abuse and curses at those that were outside of the bus. In other words, they criticized the Israelis and said basically it was a tit for tat. And then they changed their tune. They tweaked their story without any real apology. And again, beggars belief, and questions have been asked, and still there is a shadow cast across the BBC and the media as to, was that fair and accurate reporting, and whether that is the right way to go. So why am I speaking about these things? And the answer is because in this week's parsha, let's take a step back. If we look across history, we see there have been key moments in world history. The inventing of the printing press was certainly one of them. I think it was in 1608, something like that. There have been, when we had the invention of the car was another key moment in innovation. And then we had the World Wide Web, which was a real, for us, a real defining moment, and changed the communication of the world as we know it. Well, there was one moment in this past week's parsha, which also was a key moment in development of society and civilization, and that was relating to Judah. What is it that he did that was so telling? We know that there had been tremendous enmity and jealousy between Joseph and the brothers, and there was an accusation that was hurled at the brothers that they were spies. And Joseph, acting as the viceroy of Egypt, they didn't know who he was yet, wanted to see the way that the brothers behaved. And this was a key moment because he was threatening, Joseph was threatening to hold on to Benjamin, the youngest brother, and therefore history would seem to be repeating itself. And therefore the brothers found themselves in the same situation they had been before, where their youngest brother was going to be lost. But what is notable and telling was the reaction and response of Judah. And arguably that this was the birth of responsibility. We see Judah, who steps up to the plate, steps forward, Vayigash elav Yehuda. Judah says, to Joseph, the viceroy of Egypt, he remains unafraid and says to him, I'm willing to swap places. Take me as a slave, take me instead in the place of Benjamin. And therefore he was willing to give his life for his younger brother. And that was a moment which really, was a defining moment in the brothers' relationships, and in the history of the world. And it's something which started then and has continued to evolve and develop over the course of time. The idea that we all have responsibilities. For so much of history, it has all been about my rights, my entitlements. But for Jews, it's not about what I am entitled to, what my rights are. It's about what I owe society, what contribution, what am I meant to be doing? How can I make a difference? And this occurred with Judah. And when we think about the last two events that I mentioned, about the Christmas party that occurred last year in number 10, and the BBC's reporting of the bus that was being pelted, anti-Semitism being rife, there is a clear lack of acceptance of responsibility by our leaders, by those that are in privileged positions that really represent our society. And the key thing to bear in mind is that responsibility for us is not doing what everyone else does. It's really doing above and beyond. It's ensuring that our actions are beyond reproach. And therefore, it's not a box-ticking exercise. And I think there are moments that we have seen in our society which are a disappointment in terms of leadership. If we think about ourselves as Jews, and with this we'll conclude, each and every one of us is expected to be a leader in our own right. Our actions are always being scrutinized. Every single thing that you do every day, when we go out into the world and we engage in the world around us, the society around us, everyone always is looking at us for guidance, for inspiration, to see how we behave. Are we role models? Are we embodying the basic tenets of our faith, the morals and ethics? Are we upholding the law and the values of our society? And therefore, Judah really was the benchmark for us to be able to ensure that every day, every action, everything we say and do, that our actions are beyond reproach, and that we are able to inspire those around us to be able to live life to the fullest, but also with the most lofty and highest of standards. Wishing you all well. Please God, we'll be back at my desk tomorrow. Have a great day. Looking forward to seeing you very soon. All the very best. Take care.